Good evening. Welcome to a very special edition of Kaukauna History. For this journey, we're going to travel back in time 70 years to 1950, and we're going to witness the dedication of the Kaukauna Pool. At the very beginning of this video, you see that we're in the air. Our cameraman is George Greenwood, and our pilot is Len Van Zeeland. So credit to those gentlemen for this wonderful footage. The desire for a city swimming pool traces its roots to a time of tragedy. Before a dedicated spot was available, children would often swim in the canal. While this was not as dangerous as swimming in the Fox River itself, it was far from safe. A quick Kaukauna newspaper search on drownings shows countless times a child would be lost, year after year, sometimes more than one in a single dip. As the dedication speech noted, because of the very nature of the treacherous waters around Kaukauna, the need for a pool was far greater here than in many other places. The drive for a pool began in 1942 with two fundraisers. One was from the Kaukauna Lions Club, who held a big party and all proceeds went towards the pool. The other was from the local papermakers union. The money raised was turned over to the city on the condition that it be used only for the pool, not to be used for anything else. Today, the Lions Club are still big supporters of the pool, and each year sponsor pool passes for those who are unable to afford their own pool pass. So Lions have, now almost 80 years, the Lions have been connected with the swimming pool in town. That was 1942. Now, as you can imagine, things slowed down a bit because of World War II. I'll pause here for a moment to note that this is a parade that is for the dedication of the pool. It's a pretty large parade, as you can see. We're looking at the bottom of the Law Street Bridge in front of the high school. We've got Boy Scouts. We've got marching bands. We've got all kinds of local businesses who have decorated their cars up. It looks like it was a rather fun event. Of course, all the local politicians were there. Anyway, back to our story. With World War II raging on, the city wasn't really focused on building the pool. They had far more pressing matters with many of the men off to war, not, working, not at the mill. So raising funds really wasn't top priority. But the war did end. And when the war ended, they went back again to the idea of a pool. They now had the start of a fund, and people were clamoring for this. So around 1946, in fact, November 1946, a referendum was held. And they said, who wants a pool? 72% of those who voted said they wanted a pool. So about 3/4 of the population wanted a pool. This was just to see what they wanted. This wasn't actually to go ahead and make it just yet. There was some looking around. The mayor went to different cities throughout the state to see how their pools worked. Of course, being in Wisconsin, the pool has a limited use. There's certain months of the year you don't want to go to the pool. So it's like, well, how do other cities handle this? In 1948, the city hired a civil engineer from Watertown, a man whose name is no longer really known, but he was famous in his time, and he ended up working in Washington, D.C. They hired a civil engineer to find an appropriate location in the city to build the swimming pool. He was given 3 spots by the city government to look and see if they were the right spot. Number 1 was on the island behind the Carnegie Library. This was shot down because of the restricted size and because it wasn't very good ground to dig into. For one thing, it was very, very rocky, and for the other thing, it really wasn't that deep before you would dig and hit the water. As many people know, the current Carnegie Library has had some flooding issues in the basement because you hit water level not too far below the surface on the island. So building a pool there probably wouldn't have been a great idea. Of course, pool filling with water, maybe you wouldn't even notice. The second location was a piece of land just outside the city limits. This was denied for a couple of reasons. One, because it was partially on a landfill, and two, because it would be costly to extend the utilities that far. Apparently it would be a great expense to get sewage and water and electricity out to the edge of town. I'm not entirely clear where this piece of land was, but I would be willing to bet it's probably in the city limits now, even though it wasn't at the time. The third location that they looked at was what was commonly known as Pageant Hill. This is, of course, where the pool is now. I'm not personally familiar with it being called Pageant Hill, but it is the same hill where the pool is now. In April 1949, another vote was taken, this time to see about bonding issues, to see if people were willing to fund the pool, at least the parts that were not funded by the previous donations. The majority of the city said yes, they still wanted the pool and they were willing to pay for it. And because of this, construction went ahead. Now, some major components had to be brought in from farther away. Alice Chalmers in Milwaukee supplied a lot of the material, but it is worth noting that local sources were given preference whenever possible. Bids were taken, and if it was a local bid, that counted for a little bit more than a faraway bid, and oftentimes the locals could do it cheaper. Egan Sport Shop handled some of the smaller installation issues, Egan Sport Shop being on Wisconsin Avenue at the time, and Carl Plutz of Plutz Electric handled all the wiring and electrical fixtures. So Plutz Electric was a big part of the original Kaukauna Pool. The pool was dedicated on July 23rd, 1950. That would be the day this video was taken. City Attorney Harry McAndrews was the master of ceremonies for the event, and Mayor Dodie Bayorgian gave the dedication speech. Those of you who might not remember Harry McAndrews may remember his wife, Kay McAndrews, who was a very popular teacher in her day. A full weekend of events took place, including a water show, water ballet, and a beauty contest, which you should have just seen there. Miss Kaukauna, Junior Miss Kaukauna, and future Miss Kaukauna were crowned. Unfortunately, I don't have the names of those in front of me. If somebody wants to put them in the comments, I would love to know who won those contests. And if you have a photo, if you were one of those winners, that would be great as well. I don't have access to the things I need for looking that up. The pool was a huge draw. We actually have the complete record for 1957 on file, and there were many days with over 1,000 people swimming. One day even managed to attract 1,856 people. I don't know that they've ever met that again. That's a rather large number. The pool was also the site of many events, such as scavenger hunts and talent shows, and it reliably turned a profit. So it was actually a sound investment. Although minor repairs were needed over the years, such as fixing some concrete and maybe getting a new diving board every now and then when the springs got loose, overall it didn't require a lot of repairs, and the thought of a new pool wasn't even considered for 25 years. At that point, a committee was again formed, and there was talk of putting a second pool inside the high school or remodeling the pool they already had, so that it would be enclosed and could be used year-round. As mentioned before, having a pool in Wisconsin sort of limits you to only about 3 good months of swimming. If you could expand that to 12, you could have a far more profitable pool. Discussions did go far enough to the point where an architect did draw up plans, but, of course, it never happened. If any of you have memories of swimming in an enclosed pool, it was not in Kaukauna. The pool and building that are seen in this video would end up lasting 40 years. The current pool, with an improved building, but again, still no year-round swimming potential, had its grand opening in 1991. That, of course, is a whole other story. For the remainder of this video, I would just have you enjoy watching these crazy clowns flipping into flipping into the water off the high dive. There's some jousting in canoes, and I'd love to see if people have memories of the pool growing up that they could share in the comments. And yeah, just so glad to get this video out there to the public. Have a good night.